Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grillin' JR with the voice of wrestling. Good old Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm great, Connie. Great. It's a great week. One of my favorite weeks of the year. It takes me back to my boyhood. Growing up in eastern Oklahoma as the only child, in a four-room, not bedroom, four-room concrete block house. But there's one thing about that little concrete block house, man. On Thanksgiving Day, my mama made it smell really, really good. So anytime I'm anywhere and I smell Thanksgiving food, which to me means cornbread dressing. Somebody said, what is dressing? Well, you may call it stuffing where you live. I call it cornbread dressing, and my granny and my mom made the best. And that's exactly what Jan would cook every Thanksgiving. I didn't really care if we had anything else. Turkey, chicken, ham, didn't matter. Cornbread dressing was my big thing. And so it's a good holiday to have good memories, watch a little football, be with special people. So I'm enjoying it. So I hope everybody else does too. The ones that celebrate it or observe it, enjoy it. What the hell? It's one of the best family holidays of the entire year.
Yeah, it's Fat Guy Christmas. And I'm like you. I grew up with dressing, and my go-to, this is a casserole season, as you know. Mm-hmm. My mom's go-to were broccoli casserole and squash casserole. Does Jim Ross have a favorite casserole around Thanksgiving?
Well, the old green bean casserole is hard to supplant at least once a year. Mm-hmm. With all the mushroom soup and the grilled onions and all that stuff. But I'm really intrigued by the ones you mentioned your mom made. I would be very invested in both those, quite frankly.
I think you'd be into it. We got to get you down here for a Thanksgiving sometime. But of course, this year you're on the road, man. Last night was the big AEW show. I think that's going to be a bit of a tradition there at Sears Center. I could be wrong, but what a cool, wrestling and Thanksgiving. It just goes together like peanut butter and jelly. And people say that about you and our subject today, Jerry, the King Lawler. And oddly enough, Jerry actually beat you to the company. He comes in 1992, but you and I've never talked about this, through your days working the territory system. Jerry Lawler has been a mover and a shaker since at least the 70s. When's the first time you had the opportunity to meet Jerry?
I met him in person for the first time, Conrad, at a around 83 or 4-ish. Watts flew in Jerry Jarrett and the King from Memphis to Shreveport to go to our TV and to observe, because there was a talent exchange in the making, and that did happen. And that way Lawler and Jerry could better evaluate the talent, what we had, what they could do, et cetera, and give Watts some feedback. And I remember one of the feedbacks was the fact that all of our good-looking guys are heels, and all of our big ugly guys are baby faces. I thought that was an interesting. I remember having that discussion with those guys. But Lawler came in with Jarrett, and then he set in for a match. So the first match that Jerry Lawler and I ever broadcast together was a Mid-South wrestling match that was taped in the Irish McNeil Boys Club in Shreveport. And little do we know, it was a one-off. That's the first time we had met. Now, I was aware of Jerry. Jerry was very smart about how he marketed himself in Memphis. You don't stay alive in your territory as long as he did, and not be doing some things right, especially in promoting yourself and the brand. So, Jerry and I it was fun doing the call with him, but I had been aware of him, as I said, started to say, through the after magazines and so forth. He was very, very good about, I don't want to say manipulating, but maybe that word is applicable here, but encouraging the magazines to do stuff with him. And I remember after I got in big trouble one time for, I think he showed Lawler had beaten Andre in Memphis or slammed him or something. I don't remember, some controversial deal. And I know the WWF office got very upset about that. But Lawler's always a great entrepreneur. He still is.
Talk to me a little bit about what his reputation in the business was, because I think a lot of our younger listeners only know of Jerry the King Lawler, the commentator and sort of the comedy wrestler in the WWF, which, he's definitely had more comic relief in this WWE phase of his career than he did when he was the top guy in Memphis. And if you didn't live in that area, or maybe you're not old enough to know, you may only know him as a commentator. Chat with everybody a little bit about who he was as an in-ring performer in his heyday.
Well, I said this before on other entities, that when people add on Q&As we do, like the one we just did not too long ago in Nashville with Tony and yourself, people ask those questions. And the one thing about Lawler that I say is that if you look at all the attributes that he brought to the table, and still brings to the table in a large degree, if you look at all the attributes that Jerry possessed, all the skill set, you'll be very hard pressed to find any wrestler that checked more boxes than the King, and checked them not just in a faint pencil check with a big Sharpie check, big bold. He was a hell of a babyface. I mean, amazing. He was a hell of a heel. Believable. Understood crowd psychology to its utmost degree. He was an excellent promoter in the fact that they made money in that territory for many, many years. If you only think about how that territory ended in its final days, it's not unlike the final days of most any territory that had final days. But the territory for many, many years, decades, as a matter of fact, was very successful. And Jerry learned to be a hell of a promoter there. We know that when he broke his leg or he had various ailments, his managerial abilities to talk for his talent is as good as anybody ever heard. Then you put him behind the mic, and a lot of wrestlers are obsessed with either coming up with that pre-planned cute line, or to get themselves over more specifically. And Jerry was never that way with me, certainly. I don't recall that. We were working together, and I think that's why our team worked so well. But if you look at all the things he did well, Conrad, you're going to be hard-pressed to find anybody that checked more boxes with a bold Sharpie than Jerry Lawler. He was that skilled. So for those that are younger that only see him, as you described so accurately, as a comedy guy, then you've missed the boat. Some of that stuff from that Memphis territory, where he was the booker, the top babyface or the top heel, was amazing Shakespeare. Great production as far as in bell to bell, good psychology, and he worked with some of the biggest stars in the history of pro wrestling, and that all came through Memphis at one time or another. So his career, unfortunately, for some, it's been largely forgotten. The early part, the young babyface years, the heel turn, et cetera, dominating his market that he grew up in, has been largely forgotten. But the good news is that it's accessible. WWE Network's got a bunch of stuff on it, YouTube, obviously, and then I'm sure Jerry's got stuff on his website that that would probably also lend you to be able to see some great stuff. But all the things he's done, it's just incredible. I was lucky to have him as my partner, and I used to tell him this, embarrassing sometimes, I said, you're the star of the damn team, pal. You're the star. I'm the point guard. My job is to get you the ball. and shoot those threes, get hot and roll it. And that's kind of how I looked at that deal. He was the star of the team. I put him before me, and because it worked, not because I'm a benevolent, nice guy. Oh, JR's a nice guy. Bullshit. I'm not that nice a guy. But it worked. Egocentrically, Conrad, I didn't want to be a part of a failure. And the JR and King combination was far from that.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a duo that people are talking about today as one of the most iconic duos. And it's just fascinating to me that that's just one piece of Jerry Lawler's contribution. You know, we talked about his view as maybe a comedy wrestler to a younger fan base, but I think as I get older, I have more appreciation for all that Jerry Lawler accomplished. And the Mount Rushmore of wrestling discussion is talked about a lot. And it feels like they just go to the top guys in the WWF history, whether it's Rock or Stone Cold or Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair or whoever. But Jerry Lawler belongs on a mountain somewhere with the likes of Bobby the Brain Heenan, because I don't think there was ever a job, whether it was in front of the camera, behind the scenes, or behind the microphone, or in the ring, that Jerry Lawler didn't excel at.
I haven't found that yet. I haven't found anything. He was, he was a great traveling partner too, for me, but you're right. More focused and more oriented as far as his career is concerned. Yes, he was, like I said, if you have a guy that's a great baby face, sometimes there's a little drop off on the transition from that guy being a baby face and then becoming a villain. And then there's another drop off sometimes when you have a singles wrestler that becomes a tag wrestler, or a tag wrestler that becomes a singles wrestler. Lawler was largely a tag wrestler early on because, Jackie Fargo kind of adopted him there, and he was Fargo's kind of a protege, so to speak. But everything Jerry did was at a high level, as good as anybody else you could find or book in that role. And you can't find that very often. And then his magic for all those years, is behind the mic. And if you look at that situation, we made sure that our team evolved. And one of those evolution points is the fact that Jerry became, when he first got there, I went on the air, and I think, I can't remember when Raw started, 93-ish, maybe January 93.
Yeah.
So something like that. He was a heel, and a very annoying, convincing heel, that knew psychology and knew how to get people over, not just physically, but mentally and in a TV persona wise. And then as time went on, when, Vince left the trio and became Mr. McMahon, then all of a sudden Lawler kept evolving, and he became more of an ally of JR's, and we were both baby faces to some degree, even though we'd say things were controversial from time to time, speak our mind from time to time, but basically we were there, we knew what our role was. So his role changed again, and now with him on Raw, with a whole new set of partners, his role is still evolving. I watched a little bit, I heard a little bit of his work on over the weekend, and thought, he's still evolving, still changing, which reminds me, we talked about Chris Jericho doing that. The smart guys figure out how to evolve and stay ahead of the game, especially when you're like Jerry, who's getting close to 70 right now. And, he still works every weekend just about. I mean, if he's got a weekend off, it's rare because he enjoys the wrestling much, much more than he enjoys the broadcasting. Even in a small venue, few hundred people, he's there. He can pull a strap down. He can get the music entrance. He can all that stuff. He enjoys that. And why the hell not? So I asked him the other day, I told this story here. I said, how long are you going to do this shit? How long are you going to go to these little places and do all this stuff, travel? It's a travel, folks. It's not actually getting there or being there. It's getting there and getting home. He said, I'm going to do it as long as they keep booking me. I thought that's probably the most level-headed, honest, sincere answer that there was. As long as promoters are willing to pay him to come do what he can do in the ring or wants to do in the ring, then he's going to continue to do it. And he hasn't said it, well, I'm going to quit when I'm 73 or I'm 75 or who knows. But it's all he's ever done. So I encourage you to do it, continue to do it for as long as he can, as long as he's healthy.
We should mention that the reason we're doing this show today is because tomorrow is his birthday. So at some point today or tomorrow, find Jerry on Twitter and wish him a happy 70th birthday.
There you go.
Let's talk about when he goes to the WWF the first time. He actually beats you there. He makes his way up in 92. And up until this point, he sort of ran his promotion, sort of rallying the troops, the local fans and his market there in Tennessee to, pull for him by making fun of the big guys. So, you know, if Hulk Hogan's the top guy, he's going to show you clips of when he beat Hulk Hogan, or if Andre's in a big angle, he's going to show you where he body slammed Andre before Hogan ever did, or whatever. And now, after years of sort of villainizing and playing the us against them mentality with the WWF, he joins the company, to the point that Meltzer's headline that week is, "Hell must have frozen over at some point in the past week." Were you surprised to see Lawler make his way to New York, or was it just logical at some point everybody's going to have a stop through New York?
If you're good enough and Vince can make money with you, you're going to be booked to New York. If you're good enough and you can create new money, if you sell tickets or whatever your measuring stick is for monetary success. And Jerry was just a proven commodity at that stage in the early 90s. He had proven that he could work with anybody of varying skill sets. He could work as a babyface. He could work as a heel. And I think, you know, the fact that he became a broadcaster was accidental anyway, because that's not why he was brought into WWF at that time. It was to be a wrestler, and which made him very, very happy. So, yeah, I think it was a natural thing. I don't feel it was a lot of those old wounds, man. Look at how many guys have got wounds in WWE now. Had an issue. They bitched here while, you know, they had an issue years ago or 2 years ago or whatever. Sometimes, man, the almighty dollar, the chance for stardom, that big footprint or that's global, is too much to overcome. And I'm not saying that was the only case for Jerry, because Jerry has one primary motivator: money. And there was money, and more money at WWF at that time than anywhere else he could have gone.
Let's talk a little bit about when he comes in. You mentioned that he is brought in as a wrestler. Eventually Vince talks him into doing some commentary. One of the stops along the way is to create the King's Court, which the WWF, I guess, had made famous, maybe 10 years prior with Piper's Pit. And so they're always looking for, you know, the next thing, whether it's the funeral parlor or the barber shop or whatever. Well, King's Court is going to be what they do for Jerry, but it's not all smooth sailing for Jerry, because Jerry's a former promoter, and, you know, sometimes the boys aren't always in love with the promoter. So apparently, according to the rumor and innuendo, his first week or two in, somebody takes a shit in his crown.
Mm-hmm. That was in Sacramento. That was before I got there. I heard the story. It was classless. That's you know, bodily functions seem to be a fun thing to talk about in wrestling at some point for some people. Jokes, skits, vignettes, bodily functions. It's a bizarre and almost disturbing way that some people in wrestling have this affinity for creating these bodily function angles, storylines, pieces of business, whatever. And somebody thought it'd be really funny that you know, to take a dump in Jerry's crown while he was away from it, you know, it's in the locker room. So one of the boys, you know, there's a lot of rumors who it was. I have no idea. I would hate to point a finger at somebody that was innocent, but it is uncalled for. And I you know, but that's the deal. You know, somebody thought they got a bad payoff, you know, 5 years ago, or they didn't get their push. The great thing about, one of the significant things about wrestling that doesn't change, folks, is these son of bitches, and I love them, don't get me wrong, and I'm in that group, I'm on their team. Sometimes we don't like to look in the mirror when things don't go our way. You know, I'm right in the middle of finishing, and just finished on Wednesday, Under the Black Hat, our next book, the continuation of my autobiography. And I figured out, Conrad, God damn, I was a problem to deal with at times. I was challenging because I was headstrong and stubborn and set in my ways, and didn't want to compromise a lot of times, and trust issues. There's a lot of things there. So I picked up all the great habits along the way that other wrestlers had already had. I acquired those. You know, I'm the guy that can roll a joint, steer a car with his knees. That's really that's a very marketable skill, by the way, folks, nowadays. But that's the whole thing. it's just we got to look in the mirror more often, and sometimes that's not the case. But nonetheless, that happened. But he didn't waver. I mean, a lot of guys, I'm out of here. I'm done. That's it. But he didn't do that, and I just feel badly for whoever did, because I'll say this: they've kept it a well-kept secret as to actually who the guilty party was. And but it was obviously somebody that had worked in Memphis at one time, that was in that locker room that night, that didn't like a payoff or a creative direction. It's sad.
Let's talk a little bit about 1993. Not too terribly long after you come into the company, you're going to be calling WrestleMania 9. Jerry Lawler is not a part of that broadcast. Later in the year, Jerry's going to have some legal troubles. Ultimately, he would come out victorious on the other side of that. All that's been beat up to death. If you'd like to hear more about it, we did a Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, where we did a bit of a deep dive on it. But it is sort of fascinating to think that, because the timeline to me just never made sense, but I guess it's true. You technically could have done WrestleMania 9 with Jerry the King Lawler. Instead, you do it with Bobby the Brain Heenan and the Macho Man. Was it ever discussed, you and Lawler at WrestleMania 9, as far as you know?
No. He was, at that time, he was strictly coming in as a in-ring talent, as I recall, as I remember, better said perhaps. The reason Jerry got on Raw was because Savage walked. And one of those old classic deals where you know they're gone until they're gone type deal, and, you know, subterfuge of wrestling and the mistrust and the paranoia and all the normal bullshit. And so when they realized that Savage was not going to be at the taping that night on site, it was suggested that Lawler do it. You know, it might have been Bruce suggested. Heck, I don't know who did it, but anybody had been around Jerry that had watched any amount of territorial TV that had local syndicated televisions, not a national overlay, knew how good a talker he was, and that in any environment he was going to excel. You know, he's like a lot of guys. He's got that driving force that he doesn't want to be the joke of the card, or, you know, he's like Stone Cold used to be. If he didn't go on last, he was pissed off. And so I'm not saying that about Jerry, but Jerry was a very proud guy that knew he could still work as well as anybody in the company at that time. And I'm not going to disagree with that at all. But I think that was the deal. Savage walked, Vince got a recommendation, and all of a sudden Lawler is working with McMahon, and it was seamless. It was from day one, it was good.
Of course, Savage leaves at the end of '94. But the thing that I think everybody wants to talk about is his feud with Bret Hart. I think his feud with Bret Hart on TV is probably his most significant wrestling feud or angle or whatever within the confines of WWE. Of course, you know, it happens after Bret becomes king of the ring in 1993. That's a natural feud for the real king of wrestling, Jerry the King Lawler. And, the big kiss my foot match, as silly as some of this sounds, this was pretty good stuff in 1993. Do you think this is his best work within the company, or at least most notable?
Oh yeah, most notable by far, because he's working with a world-class athlete in Bret Hart. And again, as we've mentioned this show, and others have picked up on Twitter, hey, it's Conrad for you, and at JRSBBQ for me, on Twitter. Bret, I don't remember seeing Bret Hart ever in a bad match. Then you add someone with a skill set and the psychological abilities that Lawler had in telling a story that matched Bret's, no doubt about that. You had two guys that are all totally on the same page. But the most important thing about that was that it was a personal issue. There was something personal at stake that had been said or done that created this union between the good guy and the bad guy. And it was a clear enough deal where you're insulting someone's parents. That's the one thing we can all say. Everybody's got parents. You had to have a mom and a dad to get here. So in some shape, form, or fashion, we all got parents. We can all identify with some of that stuff, and most normal people can, certainly. But that was the deal there. We could understand it. It was personal, and Lawler was great at stirring the pot and creating that angst. So yeah, I think it was the best thing that they had done. And I know he complained mildly complained one time. He thought Bret was going to break his leg sticking his toe in his mouth. But it was an old school wrestling angle. It was an old school territorial stipulation. Kiss my foot. You know, the loser's got to kiss the other guy's foot. I did a version of that with Michael Cole. It wasn't a stipulation, but I had to kiss his feet, and they had made up to have like this athlete's foot and all this other fungus and shit on it. That was so funny, though. And humor is so important in wrestling, Conrad. God damn it. The only reason I watch wrestling is to get a good belly laugh, for God's sakes. Why else would you watch pro wrestling in today's market? I'm being fucking facetious here. But that was the deal. It was a personal issue. Everybody could get it. And Lawler executed the plan to a T, and Bret showed the exact amount of realistic outrage. And let's not forget good old Stu and Helen. They were there too with their outrage, and that helped build the angle as well. So it was all the stars aligned. It was all good performers in their role, and it was real. And so I thought that you're right. Jerry did a lot of things, and unfortunately, people are going to remember his angle at WrestleMania with Cole. That's the only time he got to wrestle at WrestleMania was in a gimmick match with an announcer, and I think that's been kind of a letdown for him. It would be for me. So in any event, the Bret Hart stuff. But look, we can't give Bret enough credit because during that period he was on, and Jerry realized he was hot, he was on, and Jerry was smart enough to know that I can hook my try now, and we're going to kick some ass, and they did.
We should mention that it all comes to a head for Jerry with some of his legal problems around Survivor Series 1993. He's supposed to have a bit of a payoff for his Bret Hart feud here. It's supposed to be the King's Court against the Hart family. Of course, instead, Lawler sidelined. They replace him with Shawn Michaels. He has 3 knights, and those knights, allegedly, one of them was supposed to be Terry Funk. We'll talk about that another time, but it's a shame that we never got to see it pay off exactly the way we hoped. But time marches on. And for a lot of us, that's not always a bad thing. We've been talking a lot about CBD on the show a lot lately, particularly the premium THC-free CBD products they offer over at cbdmd.com. And we really can't say enough about the quality, but I want to talk about something a little different today, Jim.
All right, Conrad, you're very serious.
Well, we've touched on it before, but I want to talk a little bit more about CBDMD's customer service. And I don't know about you, JR, but when I buy from the big online stores, it's kind of hard to see exactly who I'm buying from sometimes.
Man, ain't that the truth? It's easy to end up buying things from companies overseas without even realizing it. And I, for one, are a little uncomfortable with that deal. So if you have a question, it's really hard to reach an actual person.
Well, that's never the case when you buy from cbdmd.com. Something I want you to know is their customer service agents are based right here in the South, North Carolina. In fact, you're never going to get outsourced to a call center. Their representatives are never going to read from a script. You're always talking to a real live person, never a chat bot. And how about this? They're available 7 days a week from 8:30 a.m. to midnight Eastern time, both by telephone or live chat. And they're happy to answer any questions before you buy, because lots of people have questions about CBDMD. And as a reminder, all of CBDMD's premium CBD products are made with hemp grown right here in the USA. It's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk. And I can't stress this enough. It's THC-free, folks. So lots of folks are wondering, hey, does this mean I'm going to fail a drug test? No, but don't take my word for it. Talk to a live person at CBDMD. They'll give you all the education you could ever possibly need. And we have a really cool surprise for you guys right now. Check this out. CBDMD listens to this show. The owners of the company love Grilling JR, and they love the show so much, they're raising their discount for our listeners to 30% off your next order.
Golly, that's great.
Use your promo code GRILL, GRILL at checkout, and you get 30% off. One more time. That's cbdmd.com. And the promo code is GRILL, GRILL at checkout. You'll get 30% off your next order of premium CBD oil products from cbdmd.com. And don't forget to use that promo code GRILL. Save yourself 30%.
Hell of a deal, man. And folks, be nice to yourself. this product works in many ways, and I can't. I was just walked by before we started recording. I have all my CBD products on my kitchen counter because my fat ass is in the kitchen where it probably deserves to be. So I'm never far from it. And it's so many different applications that I love. Learn about it, study about it, and then say 30% off. It's a hell of a deal and a wonderful product. And as Conrad said, there's no, you're not going to flunk any drug tests. This is not that. There is but all the good stuff is still there that makes you feel better in a variety of ways. Can't say enough good things about CBD MD.
Hey, let me ask you about Jerry Lawler here. Once these charges are dismissed, is this just a huge relief to him? I mean, what's your relationship like with him? And now I know now you guys are best of friends. Was that the case here in 93 or just business acquaintances at this point?
I think business acquaintances is probably a better way to describe it. You know, the only time we had met, as I mentioned earlier, was in the mid '80s there in Shreveport. Other than reading about Jerry in the aftermags, and then knowing talents that had worked in Memphis. If you're a star and you're booked in Memphis, at some point you did work with the King. At least you hoped you did, because that's the way you're going to make the most money, because he was the most over. But I think we were just basically a business partners. We had a lot. We did realize early on when we started working together that we had a tremendous amount of things in common that we could build on, and we did, and we have, and that friendship has lasted all these years. And that's rare in the wrestling business, quite frankly, because it's such a paranoid-laden, insecure world more often than not, because the most powerful weapon in wrestling, as we all know, folks, is the pencil, because it's got, or actually, I'll take that back. The most powerful weapon in all of wrestling, Conrad, is the eraser. And so you're one eraser swipe away from being eliminated from the main event slot or wherever you want it, whatever you're shooting for. So, but we found out we had a whole lot of good things in common, and we built on those. But as I was about to say, you just don't have that many lasting friendships in the wrestling business. One that's lasted, 30 plus years.
Let's talk about when he comes back. The charges are dropped. He's in the clear. Vince McMahon knows that, but he still keeps him off TV for what feels like several months. He doesn't actually come back until WrestleMania 10, and he's here doing commentary with Vince. And a few months later, we see Lawler start a bit of a feud with Roddy Piper. We know that that's going to culminate in maybe not the best pay-per-view match Lawler ever had, but something that's interesting along the way here is they do a King's Court with a kid who does a Piper imitation. Do you remember hearing how this came to be?
Was it the kid from Canada?
Allegedly he, sent in a tape and, for WWF Mania, and the office saw it, loved it, and they paid him $1,000 to come in and, work out the act with Jerry Lawler. And, it's not Jason Sensation, if that's who you're referencing.
That's what I was thinking. So no, I don't remember. I remember vaguely, us doing something along those lines, because here, all of a sudden you got Piper and Lawler potentially in a program, and how much better could it get? I mean, you're not looking for Hurricane Ranas in this match. You're looking for drama and crowd psychology, and bringing me to the dance, luring me in with their promos. And both Lawler and Piper, I guess we could all agree to some level that they're two of the very best talkers ever in wrestling. So why not put them together? Same area of same skill sets, same age, basic age groups, so forth. So yeah, I think that was a good booking, but I think Vince was just very cautious about what the media would say if there was not a little bit more of a sabbatical, at least a public TV sabbatical for Jerry, after all the bad publicity that was created for him and those legal matters you mentioned. So just cautiousness, I think, more or less for Vince. Vince always loved Jerry's work, and he still does, apparently, and as he should. But I know one thing. I took more ass chewings for Jerry than I did for any other human being alive, because Vince would get in my headset and say, "God damn it, what's wrong with the King? Fire him up, Jerry. God damn it, just don't sit there. What the hell? What do you want me to do? should we jump up and start doing jumping jacks? Whatever. What are we doing? Stretching? Should we just stretch some more, Vince? I don't know what you want. But he never got on Lawler's shit. And I'm sure this very day he never does. There's always others out there that can take the wrath. And so I used to tell him that during a commercial break, I'd take our headsets off. I'd lean over and say, well, I just got my ass chewed out for you again, just so you know. He'd laugh, giggle. So this is one of those deals. But we had a lot of fun together in that regard because we had so many things in common that we didn't always have to talk about wrestling. Didn't always have to talk about it. So that we had mutual interests and always, from music to food to sports to women. There's a lot of things that we chatted about on our road trips or when we were hanging out together. So he was just like having a brother. You find out, you have this brother you didn't know you had, and then all of a sudden you find out what this brother's interests are, and ironically they mirror some of your own interests. That's kind of how I looked at my situation with Jerry all those years.
Well, you talked about taking some shit. Jerry took some shit for King of the Ring 94. It goes down June 19th in Baltimore. It's him and Roddy Piper for 12.5 minutes. Piper gets the win in a 1-star match. It's just, it's a miss, and it's on last. What did you think of, this is not Lawler's finest hour in the ring, especially with WWE. Would you agree?
No, that whole show was a train wreck. That's a show that Art Donovan, the great former defensive tackle for the Baltimore Colts, was on the broadcast team with and Piper, or excuse me, Savage. Some of the funniest natural television that I ever saw was watching that show. And when they would do the occasional on camera, or the announcers would be sitting at ringside, would be shot in a background shot, and you can see the facial expressions, the pained, real facial expressions etched on the face of Monsoon and Savage. It was priceless. And I remember watching it. I was in Atlanta. Jan and I were living in Atlanta at that point in time. I was on one of my sabbaticals, and I was back down in Atlanta, and I laughed till I cried. And because it was just that bad. So I'm thinking, they're going to call me back. I guarantee you they're going to call me back. And she and I even talked about that a little bit, I said, well, the phone, I was half-assed bullshitting. Well, the phone's going to ring tomorrow, honey. Yes, sir. And sure enough, it did. So it was just it was a train wreck. So I didn't even remember the Lawler. I had forgotten about the Lawler Piper match, to be honest with you.
A lot of people
I just remember that whole, I blocked it out. But what I do remember was, again, the feel of the show, the commentary, where you have a guy out there that doesn't have any product knowledge. Art Donovan was known as one of the great storytellers of football stories ever. But he was not a wrestling fan. And you could tell the first sentence he made, now, who's this guy? Boy, he's big. That kind of stuff that pisses off fans that pay their hard-earned money to watch it on pay-per-view. So that was quickly eradicated. And I remember I didn't talk to Savage much because we didn't get along that well, but Monsoon would give me chapter and verse of that deal, how much of it, as the boys would say, an abortion it was. So, I remember that, but I don't remember that match. So maybe that's a good thing, right?
Yeah. I wish I could forget, his Survivor Series 94 match. He missed 93 with some legal troubles. He's back here in 94 for Survivor Series. This time he's teaming with, some little people, Queasy, Sleazy, and Cheesy, and they're going to take on Clowns R Us with Doink, Dink, Wink, and Pink.
Yeah.
Negative 2.5 stars is what it got in the Observer. I guess this is sort of old school, a little person match. This is, sort of the beginning, if you weren't already aware, of the comedy wrestling that Lawler's going to do.
Yeah, you're right. That's it. That was the intro to that. That was your little appetizer to the funny Jerry Lawler wrestler mode. And it was pretty weak. But in theory, it was 16 minutes. So that's about twice as long as it needed to go.
Sure.
But I thought it was just funny. The Queasy, Sleazy, and Cheesy, all kind of uncomfortable, heelish little names, no pun intended, beat the Clowns, Doink, Dink, Wink, and Pink. Funny stuff. So you kind of got all the casting situated in the naming of the teams. But it wasn't it was what it was supposed to be. A little comedy, let me love a serious card.
He works with Bret at the very first In Your House, but really it's not to have a full blown classic Lawler Hart match. It's to sort of ease Bret into an angle with Hakushi. And then after that, he's, doing some enhancement stuff here or there. But the big match at King of the Ring 95 is a Kiss My Foot match that you referenced earlier with Bret the Hitman Hart, 9 minutes and 20 seconds, 2 3/4 stars. You know, in hindsight, I'm sure some people watch this for the first time and think it's a little silly. And the silliness is not done here. I mean, we're going to pivot straight out of this into, Jerry having to go visit his dentist because Bret's feet were so bad that now they've damaged his teeth. So he's got to go see Isaac Yankem DDS. Man, you know, I know it's easy for fans on social media to get online and just tear apart creative now, but goddamn, it's not like they were hitting home runs in 95 here.
No, it's all subjective. And 95 was a crucial year. We were going through transitions. You see what the trend here is that you got Bret, who needs to be in all the top programs, but then you got another level that, do you really want older guys occupying that many spots at the top? Probably not in theory. The older guys, meaning like Roddy and the King and there are others, we go back and research it, that had their best years behind them more than they had in front of them, athletically speaking, just because of their age and so forth, injuries, wear and tear. But man, you know, that's what the company was trying to do at that time. And pointing that out helped me get my talent relations gig. We got to get younger, or we're going to die on the vine here. We can't keep repackaging guys like the Bulldog. Very good, but I mean, how many reincarnations? He's the Bulldog. He's the British fucking Bulldog. Ain't that good enough? And then you got, you know, Piper, and, you know, and then Funk was there for a while. We had a lot of great historic Hall of Fame level guys that you want to be on your team. You just don't want them all playing starting quarterback or your tailback, or what you want. You want to give those spotlight positions as best you can to some younger guys that have more years ahead of them to monetize your investment. But I think that's where we were in that transitional period. And there was a lot of throwing shit against the wall to see what was going to stick there in the mid-90s.
Let's talk about another innovation Jerry has around this time. It's probably 1995. Whenever he's wrestling enhancement talent, he would actually bring a mic to the ring with him and just talk trash the whole way to the ring. I got to tell you, this made me a bigger fan of Jerry the King Lawler. And I think he really got to show off, you know, his mic skills in a unique way. It added a great another layer. I was a big fan. What did you think of this, and whose idea was it, to the best of your knowledge?
It was either Jerry's or Vince's, I'm guessing. There may be somebody else there that how wrestling creative goes, Conrad, is you know now all these amazing podcasts you host every week, every day of the week, except Saturday and Sunday. That's coming, I'm sure. But nonetheless, it started to get a little bit old for me. But in the beginning, when it was new and fresh, like many things in pro wrestling, it worked. And I thought Jerry pulled it off. I mean, he didn't miss a beat sometimes. And instead of just doing random sound bites, his in-ring stuff during these matches, which is really the more entertainment side of pro wrestling than it is the actual physical combat side, obviously, because you're not going to get into a fight with somebody that's supposed to be good and have a mic in your hand, which restricts your striking ability and also is, awkward. But Jerry did a hell of a job. And it sounds like it was an old school. Lawler said, "Hey, Vince, what about this?" Vince did it, ha, ha, ha. Kind of like Bruce last now. Ha, ha, ha. That kind of deal. And kidding. But then they mutually agreed, and they tried it. So it was, I don't know who else could have pulled it off as well. The only guy I could think of in his heyday of working that could pull it off close to what King did would be Bobby Heenan. And Bobby Heenan and Jerry Lawler had so many of the same amazing qualities and skill sets that I have ever been around. And I don't know of anybody that I've worked with since the 70s or I saw since the 60s that had more all-around skills than the King and the Brain. You kind of stop that list at that point.
What a cast of characters the 95 Survivor Series had. Undertaker and Fatu and Henry Godwinn and Savio Vega against Jerry Lawler, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, King Mabel, and Isaac Yankem. But right after that, sometime in early December, maybe late November, Lawler suffers a broken leg in a match with Brad Armstrong in Memphis. His doctor says it's not all that serious and he'd be back in action after the first of the year, but still, now you've got one of your top guys getting injured and it's not on your programming. Is that just a source of frustration, or is there any sort of heat with Vince over an injury like that?
I think more frustration than heat, because you knew that Jerry was going to stay emotionally involved in the Memphis promotion, because he had helped, he'd helped the culture, cultivate it, and all that stuff alongside Jarrett and other talented people that were in Memphis. But Jarrett and Lawler used to book that territory half a year at a time. So Lawler would have the book for 6 months, and then Jarrett would have the book for 6 months. Was kind of the theory. I always thought that was pretty smart. You look back at nobody should be the same booker for continually forever. It's just you run out of ideas. I mean, it's the same. Look at Hollywood. Look at why do shows have a certain shelf life. Why they quit making Seinfeld type thing. It's just sometimes the creative dries up, and you got to get a fresh start, fresh perspective. I remember I was talking to Chris this morning about he's a big fan of AEW. He's a Displaced fan. He grew up as a Mid-South guy, and we were talking about how Watts kept things fresh as best he could, because Watts always was the end. He was always the guy at the end of the equation, but there were a lot of bookers there. Ernie Ladd, Ken Mantell, Bill Dundee, Dick Slater. I think Terry Taylor booked a little while. I'm trying to think who else was in there that did booking for Cowboy. And of course he was there booking. He would yes or no it, but there was a lot of change there So we got a new offensive coordinator every now and then, if that makes any sense to anybody listening as a sports fan. And so he kept things fresh, kept changing things. And everybody had their own perspective of how they would utilize the talents that we had in place. So I think that was a smart thing, the sharing the booking situation. But Vince knew everything that Jerry was doing. Hell, Vince went down there and did some stuff with him. It was all up front. And anytime you're in the wrestling business, no matter what people want to say about it being showbiz, this is predetermined and all this other bullshit, which is weak. So anyway, it's a weak way to discuss it. I like to be able to sit on the airplane in first class with somebody and say, hey, look, I know that stuff's fake. So that's how they start the conversation. And I want to say, well, I know how your fucking blue blazer and your red tie looks like shit. What are you, an insurance guy? What are you, in the fucking mortgage business? What the fuck are you? Not going to say that.
Hey.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But you know what I mean.
Sure.
That's just they got to make their disclaimer known early. Hey, look, I used to watch it, but I also know it's not all real. Then they let the cat out of the bag. But I do know that those title matches sometimes get carried out of hand. Oh yeah, those title matches are big money. They get out of hand. Shit, come on.
Let's talk about his next angle here. It's April of '96. Jerry's going to get a chance to challenge for the world title with Shawn Michaels. Of course, Shawn wins with a super kick. I guess the next really big angle that people remember, though, is his piece of business with the Ultimate Warrior in June. And the Warrior was wrestling Goldust in a King of the Ring qualifying match, and they end up getting double count out. Lawler is in Warrior's way when he's trying to get back in the ring. So Warrior's going to blame Lawler for being counted out. And now Lawler wants to give him a gift to sort of make up for it. And we should mention that in this era, the Ultimate Warrior is back in the company. And part of the deal is he's going to be using the WWF programming to promote his new comic book. And Lawler's angle here is he's going to say that, hey, you didn't pick the right artist. You picked a hack. You should have picked somebody really talented like me. Take a look at this portrait I did of you. And he has it framed with glass and the whole deal. And of course the story is he's supposed to hit him with the glass frame. The glass bursts. It's a cool spectacle. Jerry would write, problem was the big tough Ultimate Warrior was scared of the glass breaking over his head. He was afraid he might get cut. I told him I was going to hit him with the backside of the picture, not the glass. It was just a piece of cardboard and the glass would break out away from him. I assured him I'd done it several times on Memphis TV. No one had ever been cut. And now we're out there on live TV and I'm standing there with this picture in my hand and here comes the Ultimate Warrior to the ring wearing a freaking baseball cap. He says he looks so stupid with his hair up under the cap. And a great friend of the show, maybe I shouldn't say his name, but an agent within WWE now says that not only did Warrior wear a hat to the ring, he put padding in the top of the hat. He was so concerned about this. What do you remember about this? As Jerry says, angle alert when Warriors come into the ring wearing a hat.
Well, people know that listen to the show, and I'll say this to, I guess, to cover my ass, to be honest with you. You don't like to speak ill of the dead, but I mean, Warrior could be a piece of doo-doo, man. I mean, he really wasn't. You can't find a whole lot of people that will go on record saying, "Oh, he was a great guy." I loved his dexterity and his philosophy on life, and all this other stuff. I found him to be a con man. I thought he was disingenuous more often than not. I thought he was he got over. Look, the Ultimate Warrior got over because of two people, Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan. Don't bullshit yourself. It wasn't his innate talent. His talent for what? He had a look. He had an artificially enhanced look. Oh, there's other guys. Okay, easy, dirt sheet keyboard warriors. Take it easy here now. But his physique was his calling card. It was not his athletic ability or his crowd psychology. He had a very unique promo that you could listen to for about 30 seconds and still not know what the hell he's talking about. And he had a nice entrance but normal bad thing there. He normally was blown up, fatigued, out of breath by the time he sprinted to the ring. So he was a pain in the ass to deal with. And he was never committed to the business. These are only my opinions, folks. But I had all of him I wanted on that trip to L.A., and we stopped in Phoenix to kiss his ass. And Vince and Linda were with us. I think Cornette was on that trip. And I just thought that his language he used in front of Linda was absolutely abysmal and uncalled for, and showed his ignorance that he didn't have a better vocabulary than to do the F-bombs and MS and all this other stuff in front of her just to make his points. It was weak to me, and I lost a lot of respect for him at that point in time. I also remember him getting his head stuck in a stool. I think it was him or Sting. Anyway, he didn't do well with Cowboy taking to the woodshed a few times because some of his stuff wouldn't break an egg, and it's all about the look, man. It's all about the look, and that's it. So I feel bad. I said he's got daughters, and I wish them the best. They're beautiful kids. His widow, I think she works at WWE. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not. It's just I'm going to be honest on here. And sometimes, folks, I'm going to say shit that it's not going to make all of you happy. All I can do is tell you the truth as I know it and as I have personally experienced it. And Conrad, I don't know what your other guys have said when they talk about the Warrior. Does anybody talk about him in glowing terms?
No.
So I must not be too far off in that thing. So, but Lawler, look at the guys he got. Look at who they put him with. Roddy was limited at that time as far as wrestling. You have Bret had no limitations, but he was a valuable piece of talent that would need to be taken care of. At least that's my view. Then you got then you get the Warrior thing, and then you get the Jake Roberts thing. We'll get into. So a lot of guys that Lawler was being assigned to work with that were not at the top of their game at that point in time in their career. There's no knock. Father Time don't do any jobs. Period. Father Time does not do any jobs. Period. So I admire what Jerry tried to do, but you can't shine shit. And that's what Jerry was being booked with on these scenarios. Nobody with any brains could say, well, one thing, Lawler get a great match out of Warrior. Are you kidding me? Really? This is not, well, Hulk did. Yeah. What year was it? Look at your calendar. Figure this out. So I admired for what he tried to do, but it was not good booking Lawler and the Ultimate Warrior at all.
They have a match at King of the Ring, 3 minutes, 50 seconds. Of course, it gets a dud rating. Warrior goes over, but right after this, he's working a pretty memorable feud with Jake Roberts. And at this point, Jake is back on his, well, for lack of a better word, redemption tour within the company. He's turned his life around, and now we're making angles and storylines out of his real life substance issues that he's had and particular challenges with alcohol. And of course, Jerry has a great time with this. You know, a lot of people would be critical of this and say it was in poor taste. Others thought it was some of Jerry's best work. It's going to pay off at SummerSlam 1996. The match is 4 minutes and 7 seconds. Meltzer didn't like it. He gave it a dud. I thought it told a great story, very old school style match. What did you think of his work with Jake Roberts and the decision to bring to the forefront and sort of smarten up the audience at home about Jake's substance challenges?
I thought we could have been more creative about the storyline, you know, without going into all the detail about, you know, the booze and all other illegal drugs that were being ingested allegedly by Jake. I didn't think it was the greatest thing in the world there, because I don't think that anybody had any long-term plans for it to have a happy ending. So you're telling this heartbreaking story of this guy that's had, you know, been in a troubled home his entire life, how he was raised, etc. Being so unique. I did an interview with him that I don't know. I never saw it, but it was a video where he and I got down to the nitty gritty talking about his family and how he was raised and the parenting that he encountered. And I thought, I don't know how that all made the edit, but boy, it's some compelling shit. I can tell you that right now. But I thought we focused on the wrong thing. You know, I think we could tell that story a lot of different ways, and that was not the best way. Don't like to kick somebody when they're down in that regard. He had some issues. He did, and it's well documented. And, you know, Dallas Page had helped Jake a lot along the way. We're all aware that Jake's had struggles, like many of our friends. Many of the greats have had troubles, whether you be in Hollywood or on the football field or wherever. The greats sometimes fall from grace, and they have trouble adjusting. So, but I see he's doing well now. He's on the road. He's doing these shows. I've seen good reviews for them, the Q&As, stage shows he does. He's funny. He's got great stories. But this was not one of his great stories, working with Lawler.
Let's talk about what Lawler's doing next. Unfortunately, he's going to have to work with a greenhorn named Mark Henry. Now, of course, Mark Henry is going to go on to be a Hall of Famer, no doubt, and a major contributor. But here he is at the very beginning of his career, September 1996, In Your House Mind Games. It sort of is what it is. Meltzer would say at this point, Henry seems a lot closer to Bill Kazmaier than Ken Patera. Of course, after the match, and we've recently talked about this, Leif Cassidy, Marty Jannetty, and a young Hunter Hearst Helmsley would all jump on Henry. He cleans house on all of them, and then he throws Triple H over the top rope onto both of the Rockers. Meltzer wasn't high on it and said Henry showed nothing. Of course, we know that Mark Henry sort of growing up and before our eyes as a performer. But if you're going to try to get over a young talent, who better than Jerry the King Lawler? Am I right?
Nobody. And the other thing too, is that I don't think, as I recall, look back, Conrad, that Lawler and Mark Henry are total strangers. I want to think we sent, you know, I signed Mark Henry, and I think we sent him to, he got some Memphis time. Mark was an amazing, I went to the bat for him big time, and I still would to this very day. He's a lovable big bastard, and I think the world of him, except he's just a goddamn Texas Longhorn fan. That irks me about once a year. But nonetheless, I digress. But they were familiar with each other. You want somebody that understands their role. We know that The Rock made that cliche, money, know your role. Lawler knew his role. His role was to get out of there alive, to protect Mark Henry, not take Mark Henry down a road that he had never traveled on before, and only do things that Mark could do. And at that time, they were limited. They're strongman stuff. He didn't have a lot of crowd psychology, but he had natural charisma, did Mark. So it was a good booking in that regard. I don't like, I respect Meltzer immensely and have for 30 plus years. But to say and I didn't read the whole sentence, but to say that, Mark showed nothing, or had nothing or whatever, again, he's a rookie, or he's really, really young in his career. And it took a while for Mark to find his place, his stride. And that's why you never give up on talents, folks. If they have a great attitude, they show up for work with their mind right, but they're just not quite clicking yet. They have not connected. You can't shit on them. You can't turn them out to pasture, because we have, as a system, done a good enough job of facilitating the learning curve of this individual. I think that Mark got more out of going to work with, he worked for all the top Tom Pritchard, Al Snow, Leo Burke. Mark had a lot of really good instructors, because we were not going to give up on him, even though I had talents come to me all the time and say, man, that Mark Henry's not going to make it, JR. I don't see what you see in him. I said, well, stay tuned. And luckily, he was a world champion. He's the Hall of Fame. He's still doing great work. When you hear him on Busted Open Radio with our friends there, Dave LaGreca and the crew, he's going to do the Saturday show. So Mark Henry has evolved into a real player in the world of pro wrestling. But that would never have happened if we didn't have the belief in him and his heart, well, he's going to do a good job. And knowing that we needed to protect him, who better to protect a green Mark Henry than the great Hall of Fame veteran Jerry Lawler? Nobody.
Yeah, if you needed somebody to look good, you called Jerry Lawler. And if you're trying to look good and feel good, well, I've got some news for you. Have you ever wondered why so many Americans are unhealthy, sick, and overweight? Between the food supply and the sedentary lifestyle, Americans are in worse shape than ever. And that's why the team of on-staff physicians at Brickhouse Nutrition created Field of Greens. Field of Greens is an easy way for you to add fruits and vegetables to your daily routine without spending hours in the produce section or hiring a home chef or taking some cheap supplements. No, Field of Greens is made with real USDA organic fruits and vegetables. It's also going to help you boost your immunity by using antioxidants and assist in digestive health with both prebiotics and probiotics. It's like having a doctor and a nutritionist in your kitchen. One scoop delivers a full serving of fruits and vegetables, just a drop in a cup of water and a stir, and you're done. It's also great for smoothies. The bottom line, this is real food, not extracts. You're going to look, you're going to feel much, much better. Go to brickhousejr.com right now and you'll get 15% off your first order just for trying it out with the promo code JR. That's brickhousejr.com and you'll get 15% off your first order just for trying it out. The promo code, one more time, JR. brickhousejr.com, the promo code JR. And that's easy, but it's not any easier than just stirring it in a glass of water or a smoothie, right?
Yeah, it's great. It's idiot proof, folks. The thing about the older we get, the busier we get, the more involved in our lives that we get, we find ways to expedite. We find ways to monetize our time, so to speak. Because when you lose time, you can't go back and retrace. It's done. It's gone. It's like perishable fruit. When it's bad, it's bad. The great thing about this is it's so simple to maintain. And as Conrad said, you're talking real, R-E-A-L, real fruits and vegetables, not something that's cardboard flavored. This is real stuff. And I don't think you can beat it. I don't eat right a lot of the times. I'll admit it. I'm always in a hurry. I always got somewhere to go, something to do, somebody to see. And I eat on the run a lot. But thanks to this, I have the opportunity to take care of myself and still stay on the run. I think you'll like it too.
Check it out. brickhousejr.com, promo code JR. Something about these Survivor Series matches, man. Lawler was always in them, and he's in them for big moments like the one from 1996. He's going to be teaming with Crush, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and Goldust, but they're taking on Mark Mero, Barry Windham as the Stalker, Jake Roberts, and a very young Rocky Maivia. What a notable show this is. Of course, it's the debut of The Rock. It goes 2 stars. Once again, if you're trying to get over a new guy, Jerry Lawler can't be far away.
He's the common denominator because he's the rudder in the water that you need. You need leadership in the ring with these young guys. I've said this many, many times. We were blessed at WWE to, first of all, sign Dwayne Johnson. I've told this story at a lot of our shows. I've written about it. that meeting that I had with Dwayne, where we had the black beans and chicken and yellow rice, and every woman in the building was wanting to come by and give us something to drink, and some of them didn't even work there. They just looked at him. He had a tank top on. It would not have been the same if I had my tank top on. I can tell you that right now, by God. The building would have been emptied out, period. He just looked like a god. And so, but he was he was going to be the next hit guy. I felt it from the very beginning, and he didn't let anybody down. So here's the deal. We finally get him after all the great training, working with all these instructors, and he also worked a lot in Memphis as Flex Cavana. I didn't give him that name, by the way, quite frankly. I don't know who did that one. Nobody did me any favors on that deal, but he worked through it. And all of a sudden, Conrad, he's there on the main roster, and he's in a match for the Survivor Series, and there I am gushing about him on the commentary saying, there's a blue chipper right there. And there was no line fed to me by somebody because Vince is sitting beside me. It was just my gut. This son of a bitch is going to be special. And boy, was he and is he. So we wanted to protect that, what we perceived to be a pristine investment and future in this one cat named Rocky Maivia. And if you want him to be in there to look good, to work his spots, you say, well, how do you keep him protected? Because you don't let him do a lot of things with anybody but Lawler. And if they are, they're basically, he's on the offense giving bumps. So it was a good booking. And we found out, right away, the crowd, for whatever reason, they spit him back at us because I guess we pushed him too hard. So it tells you can't do this. You can't just go stuff things down people's throat. Even today, it don't work. So, we had to take care of The Rock. And he wasn't even The Rock then. He was Rocky.
Well, right after this, or so it seems, he's in another big angle. This time, he's going to be tasked with taking on ECW. There's going to be a bit of an on-air feud with Jerry Lawler and Paul Heyman. And, this is good stuff. He's out here sort of roasting ECW, saying that, the ECW arena should have been made out of toilet paper because everything in it's shit and it's extremely crappy wrestling and really good stuff. Behind the scenes, what was the relationship like with Paul Heyman and Jerry Lawler here?
It was controlled animosity. I don't think either guy liked the other very much.
Why do you think that
they both respected each other's abilities as professionals because they both knew how good the other was at doing their job. You'd have to be a recluse and have your head up your ass not to see that both of them were highly skilled. But they just didn't get along culturally, personally. We did one of those shows on WWE Network where we talked about things happening in the ring, and I asked Lawler, he broke Paul Heyman's jaw. And I asked him point blank, was it an accident or did you do it on purpose? I did it on purpose, says Lawler. So there's always some heat there, and it generally is one of the two C's. I don't know which one it is. So I can promise you, if Heyman and Lawler did not exist well in that era, it was because of one of the two C's, cash or creative. But they also had a lot in common in the fact that they could make you love them or hate them just by what they said and how they said it. So they were highly skilled in all the right areas. But they and maybe it's the fact that Heyman's from Scarsdale and Westchester County, New York. Father was very successful and a fluent attorney, and Lawler was raised in more of a blue collar atmosphere, growing up in Memphis, become the local hero there. They had different backgrounds. They had different routes to get where they're going. So they just didn't, there was just no commonality there other than some wrestling stuff. And some of the wrestling stuff then was tainted because of cash and creative.
Let's talk a little bit about what he's doing next. He's going to be put into a bit of a feud with Goldust, and he's going to blur the lines here in a couple of promos where he's talking about the man behind the character, Dustin Rhodes. And he's going to be very critical of the Goldust character, saying some very not so nice things, and doing the same about, at the time, Dustin's wife, and even mentioning his daughter. Way, way, way over the top. I assume that Jerry's not going into business for himself. All of these remarks are approved ahead of time.
I think probably generally, yes. But Jerry's like a lot of great performers that's doing extemporaneous speaking. they can't do the same line the same way again and again.
Right.
So I think that's kind of where he is on that. I think it's a lot of instinctual stuff that always affected our pre-gaming. You know, when we started working together, about just the two of us. And I thought that was the best incarnation of JR the King, was a two-man team on Raw. I learned early on, like in about the first few weeks, that he detested prep work. So I come with all my highlight stuff and all my little, red highlighter. The orange highlighter meant this, and the yellow, I overthought it. But it helped me. But then when I wanted to share what I was using to help me, it wasn't what he wanted. It didn't work for him. So we stopped pre-gaming. And I would just give him the high spots that I was aware of, because all you had to do is give him that. That's how Dusty Rhodes used to work with me on TV. He knew I knew enough to not screw it up. So he'd give me just the basic nibbles of where he's headed, so I could fill in the blanks with my own feelings and my own timing. And that was Jerry. Again, my job was as a point guard. The point got us on the segment and off in the segment and off the segment, off the commercial break, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a certain amount of symmetry there that has to be in place. We're trying to do that now with our three-man team in AEW with Excalibur and Tony. We're still a work in progress, but we're damn sure we're getting there. It's just taking some time. It's always going to take time. But Jerry was best unprepared in that regard. Now, he was prepared. He knew who the baby faces were, the heels were. He knew what the issues were. He knew the titles, who the champions were, what this match was about. But past that, he didn't want to know anything else. And I accepted the same theory that, people ask all the time, did you know Foley's getting thrown off the Hell in a Cell? No, I didn't know, because Jerry and I were not incessant on telling us everything that's going to happen. We felt like that we could figure it out. We kept it up with the program. You never get away from it. You're there. You do it live every week. So how the hell could you get away from it? So you're never going to be detached, but then allow our instincts to take over. If our instincts are good, we'll give you a great narrative or great lyric to your music. If it's not, guess what? We're out of there. So for many, many years, we were solid, and that was our spot. And that was the happiest time of my career thus far, was working with the King on live TV when we were fighting to compete and get back in the number one spot. Best competitive time, most challenging time, giving talents an opportunity, bringing new guys in the business and giving them the ball. Look at all the guys we facilitated during that era when he and I were on the air together. Their chance to get on TV, or when they got on TV, to put them over and position them correctly. I mean, the list goes on and on, Conrad, of the guys that were made on Monday Night Raw during that era that are rich now. They're Hall of Fame bound now, or if they're not already in it, and they're made men and women. I love that. That's the greatest compliment that I could have ever had in my career, was that.
Of course, we know Lawler's going to have a busy 1997, perhaps no better than early June, where he's going to show up at the ECW arena and just create chaos after the lights go off. And then when they come back, Jerry's in the ring, and man, it's riotous here. And then the next day he's on pay-per-view taking on Mankind for the King of the Ring. Of course, Mankind gets the win. I think this is the first time Jerry was actually involved in the King of the Ring in three quarters. The next night on Raw, though, Lawler is going to bring Van Dam to ringside, and we're going to continue the ECW angle with Scorpio, and there's going to be some schmaz here with Paul E, and it's just really well booked, the old ECW thing, and it's going to culminate, as we know, with a pay-per-view appearance for Hardcore Homecoming. Jerry Lawler working with Tommy Dreamer. What do you remember about Lawler telling you his experience with all this ECW stuff was? Because this is something that, fans who were watching at the time really believed in. They thought, okay, well, this is whatever and that's whatever, but man, Lawler really hates these guys and they really hate Lawler. And some of that is because the ECW hardcores were so behind Paul Heyman. Man, Jerry Lawler had white hot heat to that audience.
Yeah, big time. The real organic, legitimate heat. It reminds me a little bit of Lawler's resistance to ECW was, I think, more twofold. First of all, I don't think he had any grudges against any of their talents, because I doubt very seriously, in all due respect, that he had a relationship with hardly any talent on the roster other than the occasional Terry Funk coming in or whatever like that. But the presentation of pro wrestling, much like it has been the last couple of years, it continues to evolve. And I think that's what Lawler was resisting at that time, publicly. This is junk, and it is crappy, and it's all chairs and tables and fluorescent lights and all these other things. It's not wrestling. It's just a stunt show using gimmicks. So he sold that. That was his platform. And of course that flew right up in the face of the diehard us against the world fans at ECW that Heyman did an amazing job of manipulating and leading to where he wanted to go. So I like the fact that we did that angle. I think it added some freshness to what we were doing. It exposed some really good, deserving talents, more of a platform to do their thing. And I took that as an opportunity to get to know some of these cats, and then I hired them, a lot of them. And because they were ready, they were hungry, and they had paid their dues for damn sure. And they needed to make some cash, and so we were there, and we provide that opportunity. So I think that Lawler stood for everything that ECW's fan base and their brand did not. He was the old guard, the establishment, and they wanted new innovations, new things going on, maybe less selling, maybe more sensationalistic spots, and some spots that they were doing that should have probably in all reality been finishes were high spots. And some old school guys thought that was not the way to steer the vote. So here's the deal. As a wrestling fan, those are some of the most fun shows, those ECW, WWE shows, pay-per-views that I think that I was there. I never got to be a part of any of them because that was Joey Styles' deal, which I fully applaud and love Joe's work and still do. But, it's fun to watch. As a fan, it's just fun to watch. And one of the reasons they were fun to watch because you had a heel that was, God, like you said, Conrad, white hot. Do we have any heels that are white hot today? Now, I'll tell you, this is going to sound, well, he's self-serving, he's kissing Tony Khan's ass. Chris Jericho's probably the best heel in wrestling right now.
Well, Cody's probably the most over babyface for sure. I mean, they've told some great stories with Jericho and with Cody in terms of making one very, very hated, even though, he's still funny. And I know how you feel about that, but Cody, the most sympathetic babyface in the game right now.
Yeah. And I want to clarify one thing here, Conrad, about the funny thing. Here's what I'm saying, folks. I love comedy. I love to laugh. I love to make people laugh. I love to have fun. I really, truly do. Swear to God. But I find it challenging to try to incorporate comedy at the wrong time. So when you got the audience in the palm of your hand and you're leading them exactly where you want to go as an antagonist, it's hard to dislike an antagonist enough if he or she is making me laugh more often than not. So if the comedy is a sidebar, the comedy is an add-on, an addendum, I'm cool with that. But when we try to write it into show and overscript it, so you got to, we're 30 seconds in, I'm doing a comedy spot or a bit, then I'm going to do my thing, and then before I get my close, my promo, I'm going to do another comedy line or two. Then if you're entertaining me, why should I not like you? If you're making me laugh and you're giving me pleasure and what you're saying is funny and entertaining, what is the reason then that I should dislike you as a villain? It's hard. It's hard to differentiate. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about with that deal. But Lawler was really good Lawler's great at that because he knew timing and he knew crowd psychology. But it's a very delicate line that you walk. But I think Jericho right now is the best pro wrestling villain in the business. And yeah, I'm biased. I work his matches every week that he wrestles, and I have great respect for him. So I am biased. I'm going to admit it. But I do think if he's not the best, you got to prove to me who's better.
Something Lawler was not the best at was hitting dudes in the ball sack with canes. We should mention that on the way to this big match with Tommy Dreamer, He has another one of these appearances at the arena. That's a surprise. He takes Sandman's cane, whacks Tommy between the legs, errant shot. The pain is so excruciating. Tommy actually passes out for a moment. After the show, he has to have one of his testicles drained because it had swollen up, something serious. But of course, Tommy gets his revenge at Hardcore Homecoming, the second pay-per-view from ECW. And that essentially ends the ECW WWE feud. But there is going to be a feud in the courtroom brewing. Allegedly, there is a lawsuit involved against Jerry Lawler and his partner, Larry Burton. And this is coming from Mark Silker, who is somebody who was trying to buy out the USWA. This is going to be a mess based on what the guys thought they were buying and then what they actually bought. And this has always sort of stuck out as, I don't know, exhibit A of why buying a territory, when guys were buying territories in the 80s, was maybe a little bit of fool's gold. What say you?
Big time fool's gold. Big time. What are you buying?
Right.
Tape library. And how haphazard many of these territories were with their inventory, their tape library, how they accounted for and the authenticity of the intellectual property. Do you really own this, or is it all free and clear? Have the talents that appeared on here signed off? All these appearances. It was not a well-run business because a lot of those guys, those big ego owners and promoters and stuff, never thought they were going to go out of business. So they didn't prepare for it. A few of them did. Cowboy did. Paul Bosch did. I think that the Von Erichs did. But they're all old school people. And as you went along and farther on, it just younger. It didn't resonate. So I thought it was a fool's gold deal because I don't know what the hell you're buying other than that library. There's a library all free and clear, has been cataloged, has been organized. Well, I knew most of those answers. Probably not, quite honestly. So I thought that the guy was. I thought the guy was a fool's gold is a nice, polite way of putting it.
Of course, the next big thing that Lawler's going to be involved in is a storyline with Al Snow, who's coming home from his stint with ECW. And eventually, as you know, he's got the head with him. His son, Brian Christopher, is going to get a bottle of Head and Shoulders shampoo and stick it with the head and then pin it because, the head doesn't have shoulders. He needed head and shoulders. They're not. Yeah. Some of that comedy you were talking about earlier, here it is again. We should mention 1999, big year for Jerry Lawler. The movie Man on the Moon comes out. There's even a couple of great documentaries about this. Of course, it's the story of Andy Kaufman. Lawler was famous for having a tremendous interaction and feud with him in the early 80s, including a real special hit on David Letterman's show that people are still talking about. This is way before things went viral, but if going viral was a thing, that would have been a thing back for this. Talk to me a little bit about his experience on working with Jim Carrey, making this movie Man on the Moon.
Well, Lawler got the approval from Vince to be a part of it, so he could miss some things if he had to. And then, ironically, Larry Burton was an instrumental part of that process. I'm not so sure how much I think he basically did Lawler's deal. And because to make the Andy Kaufman story, Man on the Moon, starring Jim Carrey, you need a Jerry Lawler. I mean, it's kind of key. It's kind of important. So Jerry got the role, and then they needed to hire some other folks, and so they got Lance Russell. And I thought, well, Lance is that'd be great, because that was his role. He was the guy. And then they hired me, thanks to Larry Burton, and I got Lance was a ring announcer in the movie. He was also the ring announcer more often than not in Memphis at the Coliseum during that era. And he also did play-by-play. So I did the play-by-play and Lance did the ring announcing. But we spent 3 or 4 glorious days in LA with our wives and great hospitality. And Burton had this deal. I never understood it. It's always kind of a head scratcher. With Morton's Steakhouses. And he was treated like a king at Morton's. He could get in any Morton you want to go to. There's no wait for him. It was just absolutely amazing. So I don't know what kind of deal he had with Morton's, but it was really unique. But Larry was a little bit shady in my view. He was one of those guys that would talk a mile a minute and not look you in the eye. And Conrad, we both have met a lot of people in wrestling that way. They ain't gonna gain no eye contact because they know they're lying to your ass.
Right.
So Larry was a kind of a shady hustler, entrepreneurial kind of a guy, and I never really trusted him, quite frankly. He was likable enough to be around at times, but he was just, there are too many unanswered questions about his background, and I know he had 2 or 3 different names, I used to kid him about all the time. Now, what's your name today? Are you Larry Bergman, Larry, whatever? He had like 3 aliases. So, as I recall, so he was a different cat, but he was the one that got us that movie deal, and Milos Forman was the director. He's an Oscar winner. Amazing. I learned so much on that set watching those guys work, and so I got my little role. Then Milos liked my work enough that he brought me back for the following week for those scenes that I shot where I was on camera doing commentary. And there was like 30 people there. So it looked like we were still back in the Olympic Auditorium, but we were in a little sound studio. So I got a nice little thing out of that. Went to the New York premiere with Jerry Seinfeld and a bunch of other people my wife loved. I did too. I'm not discounting. But then when they had the big premiere in L.A., the big Mac Daddy premiere, Jan had to represent the family because Vince wouldn't let me off work. Because Jerry was going to go, so he couldn't let us both off Raw. So I stayed back and worked, and everybody else went to the premiere in L.A. Jerry, I think his wife Stacy was that time, and Jan, they're all buddies. We went to their wedding, and we're friends. And so I missed not going there, but at least Jan got to go.
After the movie situation is in hand, and we've got that under our belt, we're going to have a bit of a feud with Taz, which sort of seems to come out of nowhere in the summer of 2000. He's going to become a babyface, I guess, at this point. Taz is starting to bully you, and Jerry's going to come to your aid. They actually have a match at SummerSlam 2000. This is, interesting because Taz has not bled a lot in his career, but he is going to in this match. And so is your hand, because you're going to get up and smash a glass jar of candy on Taz's head. I don't think I've ever seen a candy jar on the announcer's desk before or after this. So it was kind of obvious what was coming, but what do you remember about, Lawler coming to defend your honor and this feud with Taz and this fucking candy jar?
Yeah. We said earlier, Jerry kept evolving his role not to get stale and how he presented himself on television. And one of those changes was him becoming from a villain antagonist to a protagonist and somewhat of an ally to good old JR, because we've been together for so long and we've been through the thicks and thins and so forth and so on. So it kind of made sense, kind of was realistic in that regard. I don't know whose idea the Taz thing was, to be honest with you. I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, I signed Taz with a great deal of anticipation, and I thought he was, we got a sleeper there. It's just the pushback on Taz was always the stupidest fucking reason of all is, he's too short. And I always said about the guys that say that Taz was too short have never had their ass beat by a smaller guy. And that happens every day. If you wonder, like here at OU, we got a wrestling program, have had a great amateur wrestling program here for years. And the football players, the D linemen, the offensive linemen do not want to screw with the wrestlers. No matter if the wrestlers are 130 pounds or 145 pounds, whatever it may be, you don't want to get your ass embarrassed by one of these little bulldogs that will eat your ass up because they know how to do it. So I always thought Taz got a bad hand on that deal. Of course, I stood up for him because I hired him and I recruited him and I thought he could be very, very special. And, we thought that same thing. And so the same way that, Conrad, that all these other cats from Book of Lawler, we go back and talk about the Rock, right? And all these other dudes that we want to protect, Mark Henry. Well, Taz was a guy that He didn't need protecting because he was green. He needed protecting because he was new to our audience, and we want to make sure they saw the side of Taz that we were trying to present. Who could do that any better than Lawler? Nobody. So that's how that worked out, and they incorporated me in it just as basically as a conduit to get those two guys to do their thing, and so it was a nice little angle, I guess. Of all the angles I did, were in the physical side, probably my favorite, because I didn't get overexposed of what I couldn't do, and there's not much I could do in the ring that to me was passable, at least within my eyes. So, but I liked that. I didn't have a problem with that at all, and it got Taz on the radar, and it looked like it was going to work, and then all of a sudden I think he got hurt, if I'm not mistaken. So but it was a bad idea. And look, it made Jerry anytime when Jerry got to TV, here's the things he did. He both of us would locate catering, would find out how many on cameras we had, and then if Lawler was wrestling, it added a different wrinkle and element to that night's show. And if the third element was in place, he was extremely happy, because there's not any way that he will ever tell you, because it's not true, that he liked announcing as good as he liked wrestling. It just isn't true. And he said that many, many times. He'd rather work. That's why he wrestles between big crowds, little crowds, whatever, on the weekends. VFW halls, high school gyms, whatever. He just likes performing in his art. And that ain't going to change. Even though this is his 70th birthday week, God bless him. We got to love him. He'll be taking bookings until somebody quits booking him. That's the end of that story.
Well, one of the bookings he took that maybe wasn't the best fit, the XFL in 2001, he's brought in to be a commentator, and he says he agrees to do it, even though he admits he never wanted to commentate or announce for the XFL. And he even sort of tongue in cheek admits he didn't know a ton about the sport, but either Kevin Dunn or Vince McMahon asked him to do so. So here he is. And, he's doing his typical Jerry Lawler routine. Like, when I'm around the cheerleaders, I like to use the terms tight end and wide receiver. What'd you think of Lawler and the idea of him doing football commentary?
Well, first of all, he knows football better than he wants to let on, because he's a big Cleveland Brown fan. Of
course.
And, die hard. So he knows more about football than he would probably want to let on. First of all. Secondly, Lawler and I were considered local or accessible. I lived in Connecticut at that time. So we used the production facility at 120 Hamilton to do the auditions for all the football people, the play-by-play guys and the color guys that WWE was all auditioning for the XFL. I did tons of interviews with different guys that were color guys, and I did the play-by-play on the demos. And then Lawler did the same thing, only his role was a color analyst with a variety of play-by-play guys that they were auditioning. At the end of the day, when the conversation came down to, okay, we did all the auditions, all the Hayes in the barn, who do we like? And Dick Ebersole, who was the president of NBC Sports at that time, says, well, to be honest with you, Vince, our consensus is that we need to use JR and the King. They're good. They're really good. They have great chemistry, and they both love the game, and they understand it. And so that decision was made on that first week of the XFL to put Lawler, myself, and Jonathan Coachman together at a game in Orlando that became the A game after the original A game with Vasgersian and Ventura got a little out of hand. So, but the money was never great. I did it because I love the game. I always wanted to fulfill a dream. It was a bucket list. Conrad, we made $1,500 a game for this thing.
Oh my.
Yeah, I'm serious. $1,500 a game. Now we got, they paid our T&E and all that good stuff, obviously. But $1,500 was not big payday money here. It wasn't a big deal. Now, all that's while everybody's talking about Ventura making $1 million. So, Ventura's making $1 million for a little part of a season of football, and which is great, good for him. He got a hell of a deal. But the rest of us didn't do it for the money. And at that point, when Lawler saw that the $1,500 was all we were ever going to get, it took another day away. He could make more money than that going to do an independent wrestling show in Tupelo.
Sure.
Or so. So that's how that went down, and so we got the chance to do it, but I knew that when it stopped being fun for him, and travel for anybody, folks, I'm telling you, I love going to or leaving my house on Tuesdays and going to the city. We're going to do AEW on TNT, but boy, the travel is a miserable existence. It really is. I'm doing it 52 times a year, so you just got to plan for it. You got to be prepared for it, and to add more travel to the already weekly travel we already had was more than Jerry wanted to invest for $1,500. So that's how that worked out. But if we'd have worked the whole season together, it would have been, it was bounced back and forth and all this stuff. It was just, and then he was perfect for what they wanted. That's not going to be the new XFL, as I understand it. But we had a little vaudeville, little Carney type stuff on our XFL broadcast, and it was not a smart way of going. It was not a good direction. And so, but I look, Jerry's a storyteller, Conrad. He can tell a story about anything. If you give him any preparation time to watch a few things or read a little bit at his own timing, he can tell a story about any entity that you can put on TV monitor. That's how good he is. And so the football, him being decent or good at football, was not a surprise. But him burning out with the additional travel for no money is what got him, and that's why he stopped doing it.
I got to tell you, in the small amount of traveling I've done for, our podcast ventures and whatnot, the hardest part is just getting a normal night's sleep. There's nothing like getting into your routine. And well, everybody knows this, the better you sleep, the better you'll be the next day. And if you're struggling to get a good night's sleep, you've got to try a Purple mattress. This is the world's most scientific mattress. And don't take my word for it. Check their story out, man. The founders of Purple are a couple of brothers who've been developing cushioning technology for like 3 decades for stuff like medical beds and wheelchairs. And they got together and created Purple. And I'm telling you, Purple's going to feel different than anything you've ever experienced. It gives you almost like a weightless type sensation, so you can sleep in any position. And it's not memory foam. It's very unique. It's both firm and soft at the same time. And it's breathable, so it sleeps cool, which is important to me. I don't know how they did this, but these dudes are actual legitimate rocket scientists. So check it out. And how about this? When you try it out, you get 100-night risk-free trial. If you're not fully satisfied, you can return your mattress for a full refund. By the way, it's backed by a 10-year warranty. You'll also enjoy free shippings. And if you need to, you can return it for free. Now, you're never going to return it. But check this out. You don't just get a great mattress. They're going to give our listeners a free Purple pillow with the purchase of that mattress. That's in addition to all the free great gifts they're giving away site-wide right now. Just text JR to 84888. The only way to get the free pillow is to text JR to 84888. That's JR to 84888. Message and data rates apply, but Purple mattress is legit. Is it not, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, here's the thing. Think about this, but let's think about it logically. It's not going to cost you anything to get it shipped to your house, right, Conrad?
That's right.
The mattress has a guarantee that within 100 days, you do not like your Purple mattress. Guess what? You're done with it. You can return it. They pay for the return. You're out nothing. So you have nothing to lose is the bottom line here, Stone Cold would say. Nothing to lose whatsoever. What you have to gain is great sleep. And the older we get, the more educated we get, whether we're old or young, we realize how important a good night's sleep is. And for those of us that have sleep apnea, I learned early on how crucial it is to get good sleep. Part of my routine every week is making sure that I'm up on my sleep before Wednesday nights so that I can do the best work that I possibly can. But it starts with getting a good night's sleep and letting your body rest and go into deep REM sleep. And I just say I believe that you can do that more easily on a Purple mattress than anything you know. And again, what is the risk? There is no risk, folks. Try it. Try it for 100 nights. And if you don't like it or anything you don't like about it, send it back. It's that simple.
Let's keep it moving here. Let's talk about, and I can't believe this is happening, but we're still wrestling in 2001. Feels like the Taz thing was the swan song, but man, Lawler on TV continues. And it happens at the Right to Censor angle for No Way Out in February of 2001. This is right at the end of WCW, maybe a month prior. Stevie Richards is going to pin Jerry Lawler. And the steps were, if Lawler wins, Cat gets to strip. And if Richards wins, Cat has to join the RTC. Of course, afterwards, RTC puts Cap in a burlap sack and takes her away. Star and a half. But that's not the big news. The big news is later that same month, Stacy Carter is released by the company. I think it happens on February 27th. Meltzer would say, which was strange because it's right in the middle of an angle what they're doing with her being kidnapped. And upon hearing the news, Lawler quit the company in protest. According to the reports, Lawler was at the production meeting going over the show until 2 p.m. that afternoon, then left. And when he came back at 4, Ross told him they had to release Carter. Lawler said he told Ross and McMahon that if she was let go, he would quit, and they didn't change their decision, and he left. So this has been one of the biggest stories of Lawler's career. You were there. You're very close to the situation. You're in a bad spot, as both your job and your friend are sort of all intertwined here. What do you remember about this bad day in February?
Well, here's the thing about it. And maybe somebody's going to say, well, JR sometimes had relationships with the guys on the talent roster that were unhealthy because he was too close to some of them. I'll take my chances on that, quite frankly. And those that think that may have a point to some degree, but I'll take my chances on that deal. It's like I've had with Austin and other guys. There's a lot of them that I have great personal relationships with. But, Jerry and Stacy, I just thought that they were a great couple. Jan and I went to their wedding in Las Vegas, I think Charles Barkley actually paid for their wedding. So Charles was a big friend of J.R. the King back in those days. And we had a dinner with Charles after a Phoenix Raw, and their wedding came up in conversation, and Charles volunteered to pay for the wedding. And of course, told Jerry, all right, I'm going to save a couple of bucks here. So we were friends with them on a personal level outside of wrestling. So the issue is that, as I remember it, because I had never had one person come to me and say, man, JR, you got to talk to Stacy. She's just busting her balls. It's just, you can't work with her, and she knows a better way to do everything. And she's got a little taste of the spotlight. Now she's being carried away by it type thing, whatever. Nothing. It just, Vince came out of the blue and said, I'm getting too many complaints about Stacy, and I'm not going to tolerate it. And I want you to let her go today. And boom, it's that quick. So I didn't have any. I tried to discuss it. Obviously, I did discuss it, but basically, some of the producers, writers, whatever, I think they were the culprit in this matter, because for whatever reason, she was challenging their authority or their decision making or their creativity or whatever. Anyway, that was the reason I was given, and so that's what I had to do that. And I told Jerry, I said, look, I feel bad about this deal. I don't agree with the decision. I did it then. I don't agree with it now. But that's the marching orders I got from the headquarters. So what do you get? You're a soldier. You follow your down to orders. You take the guy's money. You do what he says. So I did. And I even told Jerry, I said, maybe you want to tell her? Well, I'll tell her. Don't get me wrong. But maybe it comes easier from you. I don't know. I want to make this as easy for both of you as I possibly can. Tell me how I can help do that. So I think he told her, and as I recall. So that's kind of how that deal worked. And I thought he might want to take a few days off to show support for her, but I didn't know he was going to quit altogether. And it would have, but for Vince, it wouldn't have mattered anyway. I think Vince thinking farther ahead than I, and decided, if he bolts, he bolts. So that's where we are. So that's kind of how that deal went down. It was a bad day. I think the world of Stacy today. She does a lot of stuff with rescue animals, and she got a hair salon and a spa type thing in Dallas, Carter Hair, Stacy Carter. So she does a good job. in her post-wrestling life. She separated herself from it to her own benefit and her own mental health, I think. But she never really deserved to get canned, in my view. And I may be overbiased, I may be wrong, but I always thought that she got kind of a raw deal on that thing.
Nobody can argue that. He's in a bad spot, and unfortunately the relationship doesn't work out. Eventually, that marriage would come to an end. What can you tell us about his relationship with Stacy? We haven't talked a lot about Stacy on this show, but she's a big part of his life here for a while. And you were there for the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Yeah, I think, the story goes is that I believe Stacy's mother was maybe dating a member of Jerry's softball team. And so then Stacy, the young teenage daughter, I'm guessing 17, 18 years old in that neighborhood, would come with her mom to the softball games. And of course, the King has that great eye for talent. And they connected and started seeing each other, and one thing led to the next, and then she's living with him, and all of a sudden, she's living with him when I met him, and then then they marry, and then like I said, we went to the wedding in Vegas. I seen them in like they go. I thought that Stacy at that time was the perfect mate for Jerry. She was younger. He liked that. She was beautiful. Had a lot of sexuality. She was a wonderful laugh, and they both liked to laugh, and they in the movies and do things that they seem to have a lot of common ground in. So I really believe, man, this is one of those wrestling relationships that's going to be a long time. It's going to be everlasting. Well, unfortunately, like so many wrestling relationships, they go south for whatever reason. And sometimes those reasons for going south is that the other person in the wedding, in the marriage, I should say, want to be on TV. They want to be famous. They want to make more money, make some money. And so all of a sudden, she's being used in Memphis a little bit as a TV character, and playing herself basically. And then you got all of a sudden she's coming with Jerry to TV. She's got those beautiful blue eyes. She's adorable. She's smart to the business. And so all of a sudden, she fit the bill for all the sexiness and the look and all that stuff for those divas at that time were doing. So it was just I thought it was a magical deal, and I just thought they were a great couple together. It's just time goes on and people grow apart, as they say. And I remember after Stacy, I think his next girlfriend was sitting at ringside in Providence at a show at a Raw, and he and her made eye contact. And somebody's supposed to be a goddamn hypnotist. I don't know what the hell he is, but he locked on, and all of a sudden had one of the security guys have exchanged numbers. The next thing I know, the girl that was sitting in ringside in Providence at Raw is living with him. So he don't let any grass grow under his feet. As I say on this show sometimes, our tomorrows aren't guaranteed, Conrad. So the King was not burning any daylight. So, but I thought he and Stacy were perfect. I really did. I thought they were a great couple, but one of those deals, man. Just at the end of the day, just the relationship dissolved, and it's too bad. They were my favorite wrestling couples, quite frankly, and at that time, and things changed. I get it. Things have changed, but and now he's seeing Lauren, and they're happy, seeming to me. And, Lauren's probably 30, 31. And got a beautiful son. He just had a birthday this week. Good kid, big sports fan. And Jerry and him is saying that wheelhouse. Jerry can be to this kid what he didn't have the time or take the time to be to his other sons. I think that's great. So, he's just that he does. I think Jerry's biggest issue with the women is just he's like me in a lot of ways. We don't want to be alone. And that's, poor JR. Ain't no poor JR in my fat ass. I get that, folks. But as a human being, you want companionship. And I think Jerry's probably really in that world, because here in Oklahoma, I stay kind of low key. Jerry's involved in all kinds of stuff. The thing he did on the college game the other day was great for him. Driving his Batmobile down, or having his I think that was actually Lauren's father driving that car. So he's got a different lifestyle, Conrad. He's a different cat. I told him, I said, sometimes people ask me, what's it like to work with the King? I said, well, he's brilliant. You stay on your toes. But sometimes it's like working with Larry Flint, the owner of Hustler magazine. He has an insatiable desire to be social. And I find that quality alone is going to keep him alive for a long time to come.
The relationship would end. The relationship with WWE ends February 27th. And then, Stacy decides, to move on in, 1st of July. So during that little stretch there, March, April, May, June, Jerry is quite busy. He makes some appearances on the Man Cow radio show, really stirs things up for Bruce Pritchard and Stephanie McMahon. He is really taken to his website. He's getting up to 60,000 hits a day there. He's telling his story, keeping, in front of fans. And he's even posting email addresses of yourself and Bruce Pritchard and others saying, hey, if you wish I was still on TV, let these people know. And supposedly one of the unintended consequences is some of those fans sent you some not so nice things.
Yeah. What was that? I don't remember that.
Well, it was during the time he was on hiatus. That's the
word. Like blaming me for it?
Yeah. I think he was saying, hey, if you want me to be back on TV, let these folks know. And it's a questionable decision to say the least, but either way, not too terribly long after the whole cat thing comes to a head in real life, he gets a call. Would he be interested in coming back? And one of the suggestions that's made is maybe he should call Bruce Pritchard and try to mend fences, because he was not very polite to Bruce on the Man Cow show. And then of course, once he comes back to Raw in Nashville and Memphis, he gets a call from you that says, hey, you ought to come by. Everybody'd love to see you. They miss you. And he comes in and it probably just feels like he was never gone. Right? Yeah, no,
that all it was. He's just absent for a few days, seemingly. He was never not a part of the team, at least, in spirit. So, I have that. Sometimes you just gotta, you can't do all the protocol and all the bullshit and maintain your position for leverage position for negotiations and all that stuff. Sometimes we as administrators, especially in that world, need to do what's right. And I thought that he should come by because he was a great asset to our team, not the J.R. King team, which is obvious. He was a huge asset, the biggest asset. But to the team at WWE, he could help a lot of guys. He could, little tidbits of information here and there. Jerry was not a drinker. One of his famous quotes, lips that touch alcohol will never touch mine. I think he may have relented on that a little bit, but nonetheless, that was his saying for so many years. So he didn't drink, he didn't do drugs. He was rarely late. He was old school in being prompt and ready and professional to do his work. And then also because so many of the talents that we had were familiar with his exploits in the ring, he was a great source for information of what do you do here, what would you do there, you got an idea for this, I need a heat spot, I need a quick finish, whatever. And Jerry was great at sharing that information with those guys. So I just felt like it was a win-win for everybody involved if we get him back, get his jersey back on him and have him start playing again.
Well, and he starts playing again in November 19th, 2001. So he misses March, April, May, June, July, August, September, and October. But here you go. He's back in November and he's been there pretty much ever since. And he's had some brief breaks here or there, but one of the big things we should mention is, he gets put in the Hall of Fame and he gets put in by William Shatner.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Well, we know who stole the show at that 2007 Hall of Fame induction ceremony, The Dream, and going on last with his sons inducting him. That was the highlight for me in that regard. But selfishly, opening the show with Stone Cold as my inductor was hard to top, hard act to follow. And, but Jerry wanted, I think a lot of guys, I had a big hand in who I wanted to select to induct me and all that stuff. And it was a no brainer to me, and Steve was happy to do it. And that's not always his area of expertise. So he didn't have to do it, but he did it because he loved me and he said as much on the show. But the thing with Jerry was that he wanted to stand out. He wasn't going on first, which is the key spot, because Austin had that wrapped up. He wasn't going on last, but that was the dream spot. So wherever he was in the pecking order on that night, I'm sure he wanted to be good. Why I would want same as any of us want to be. Stand out, steal the spotlight, steal the show, as they say. Well, his plan was to get Justin Timberlake, a kid from Memphis, who became world famous, as we all know, as an entertainer, singer, etc. But he was a big fan of Lawler's growing up because Lawler was his Superman. Lawler was his superhero that was on TV every Saturday morning. They did a live 90-minute show with the great Lance Russell and Dave Brown every Saturday morning, live show, no net. And the star of that show, more often than not, in one form or another, was Jerry the King Lawler. So these kids like Justin Timberlake, for example, that grew up in that area, King was a guy. So, but the dates couldn't work out. Scheduling conflicts prevented it. How Shatner got on board is beyond me. They did a little spot one time on Raw where Lawler took a bump for Shatner. And that may have been the catalyst to it. I'm not aware that Jerry's a big Star Wars fan, but he might be. But in any event, I remember sitting in the green room that day, nervous as a whore in church, thinking how I was going to do my presentation right out of the box. And then I had to follow Stone Cold immediately, which is never going to be easy. So I outbooked myself there on that deal. So I'm worried, I'm apprehensive. And then I hear Shatner ask one of the production guys, "Where's the prompter?" And I haven't seen my script yet. Uh-oh. There was no script, Bill. I said, "Mr. Shatner, I don't think, just call me Bill." "Okay, Bill." "Bill, there's no script. It's ad-lib city." And he got a look of fright. Because I was standing behind him looking down his hairpiece. I want to see if I could see if he was wearing a hairpiece or not, how that worked. Because it was mysterious to me how he could have such natural looking hair, obviously be a piece. Nice piece, but a piece nonetheless. So I was trying to investigate that, standing behind him while he was sitting down talking to somebody looking the other way. That's how we spend our days, folks. So anyhow, that's how that worked out. Shatner got the deal. Hey, look, on paper, if you didn't see his performance, it's a pretty impressive deal. Jerry Lawler is presented by William Shatner. Well, Shatner's he's over. He's got a baby face following with his, and you don't believe me, go to Wizard World sometime, watching what the kind of crowd he draws. So that's how that worked. It was a fun night, 2007. That's the weekend that we did the Donald Trump, Vince McMahon thing with Bobby Lashley and Umaga, the billionaire hair thing. And
let's talk about WrestleMania 27. Lawler finally gets his WrestleMania match. And, of course, when you think of Jerry Lawler, you think about all his famous feuds and all the big matches he had. Of course, none bigger probably than Bret Hart. His WrestleMania match, after all these years, is with Michael Cole. Lawler is going to win by submission, and the anonymous Raw general manager will reverse the decision due to Steve Austin, who's the referee here, physically getting involved in the match by pushing Cole, and that made Cole the winner by disqualification. Come on, man. Jerry Lawler finally gets a match at WrestleMania that's against Michael Cole. You're friends with both of these guys. What'd you think?
Well, first of all, Michael Cole would have had no problem whatsoever putting Lawler over.
Of course.
And secondly, why the decision was made. What are you saving Michael Cole for? His next big program at next year's WrestleMania? Are you shitting me? Come on. And over the years, that's what happens sometimes in wrestling. When you go back and evaluate something, it makes no sense. There's no upside for having this loose-ended, non-conclusive finish. It's poor creative and being goddamn lazy. And I see that a lot on TV and around. There's the laziness, these goddamn producers and coaches and agents. You know, I just, it's annoying to me. That's another, that could be a whole damn show. But yeah, that made no sense. And I called it. I was there. You know, that punched my ticket to give me a gratuitous, well, throw JR a bone. I got a bone for you. You stick it right up your ass. How's that? You know, come on.
What'd you think of the, you know, he's finally getting a WrestleMania match. It's gotta be a big deal to him, even though he probably downplays it. I mean, it's WrestleMania and he's, you know, been around for a long time. This is the biggest show. He belongs to have a match there. He deserves it. Cole.
Well, it shows you that a lot of the creative input that Vince was getting was from people that had never seen Jerry's serious work when he was on fire in Memphis or an AWA and other places as a babyface or a heel. They had one vision of Jerry Lawler, a comedian, a comedy wrestler. That's their vision of Jerry Lawler. And they were internal. So the input that Vince is getting is, you know, we could do this. We get one more out of this. We get one more out of that. We could do something with Cole, blah, blah, blah. And he, of course, he belly laughed, thought it was funny. And I don't think he thought it was funny to get even Lawler, because I don't know if Vince thinks that deep in that regard. He might, but I think they thought it was be an entertaining aspect of the show. And Vince loves these let me up segments, where you have a serious business going on, boom, boom, boom. Then you have a match where it's you kind of let me up. You take the foot off the gas, kind of cool here. And I think, and usually that's comedy or a short match between unskilled people. And that was not the case there with Lawler. His skills inbound on the roster. But bottom line was that was his perception as a comedian. And now I see he's doing a little bit more straight stuff on TV. He has his jokes here, there, and yon, but they don't have anybody sitting out there on Monday nights that has a better feel for how to analyze a match and get talent over than Jerry Lawler. So he's the best color guy they've got, in my view, when he wants to be that guy. But sometimes, you know, it's easy for him to be swayed. He's like Jerry's so much like Bobby Heenan in their amazing skill set, as good as I've ever seen, and all the things, the boxes they check. But, you know, Jerry had rather be funny. He'd rather be entertaining, because the wrestling he's seeing is not commensurate to him being serious oftentimes. At least that's how I perceive it. I might be wrong. So he's still evolving in that regard, much like Jericho was mentioned earlier. But you know, left to his own devices, he'll be a little bit funny. But when the moment calls for him to knuckle up and to call a serious match, he can still do that with the best of them.
What do you think Lawler's legacy in the wrestling business is going to be? Do you think because such a big audience saw him doing comedy that it's going to be comedy and puppies and all that?
Probably yes. The older audience, Conrad, even down dipping, and you're not old, but your age group can remember Lawler as a serious star, whether it be in Florida or Atlanta. Of course, Memphis is best known for his AWA title run, his stuff with Kerry Von Erich, working for Vern, all those things. The Dallas experimentation, where you had the Texas talent and the Dallas Tennessee talent and the Dallas talent, all that stuff. And his empty arena matches, his matches, all these great stars. The angle we did the other day with Jericho and Scorpio Sky was essentially the same basic angle that Lawler did with Flair in 1982. So he's not given credit for those situations very much at all, but he'll always be known to me as, I've always said this, Conrad, and I truly believe it, that the two men with the most boxes checked with the high level skill sets, plural, were Bobby Heenan and Jerry Lawler. Wrestling, heel, babyface, tag teams, blood and guts, a real, 60-minute Broadways. And like I said, I mentioned the tags, to the fact of managing. Even though Lawler's not known to be a manager, can you imagine how good a manager he would be?
Oh yeah. He'd be up there with Cornette and Heenan and the whole deal. Absolutely.
But he was better than Cornette and better than Heenan and better than Heyman in the ring.
He's who Cornette looked up to. I mean, it was one of his very favorite wrestlers. Let's Let's talk about, as we're wrapping up our episode in tribute to Jerry the King Lawler. I do want to remind everybody, tomorrow is Jerry's birthday. He's going to turn 70. It's a big day. So be sure to go out of your way and send him a birthday tweet. But we posted a tweet saying, hey, want to ask a question to JR about Jerry the King Lawler? By all means, drop it here. And if you've got a question you want to ask about next week's show, well, just cruise on over to @JRGrilling on Twitter. Jim, I'm going to give you a few here, rapid fire. Let's get through as many as we can. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Michael wants to know, when you were in WCW, was there ever talk of bringing Lawler in there?
Don't recall any serious talk whatsoever, but we would have been smarter and a better company if we had.
Carl Fitzgerald wants to know, what's your favorite one-liner you remember over the years of Jerry Lawler on air?
Oh my God, that's impossible to name. It's like saying, what's your children you like the best or the better in my case? Too many, man. It's just, he used to sit there. He had notes. He had his own material, and it got so dog-eared and tattered because he never changed it. It was just, he had things he liked to, certain go-to jokes based on category. But what Jerry did the most amazingly was, during the show, he would doodle. I mean, he would draw little cartoons, little caricatures all over his format sheets. And some of them were R-rated or worse, or better, depending on your perspective. But I always said to him, if we took all your doodling from your TV sheets and put it into a little paperback book, it's money, because there's cartoons. And he and I could come up with the captions. We never got around to it, unfortunately. But that's what he did the most. But he's a big doodler during the matches when we were working together. But he's amazing. You know, amazing on how he can process what he sees into a story that the fans can understand.
Let's talk a little bit about the artwork you mentioned. Deplorable Hombre wants to know, do you have any Lawler artwork at home? And if so, what's your favorite piece and why?
Well, I do not have any, and it's not because I haven't requested. For years, I stayed on his ass about making a Christmas card, a character Christmas card, a kind of comedic thing, Jan and me. And unfortunately, we never got around to that. But I've seen at all the shows we've done. If you haven't seen Jerry's artwork, go to his website, man. He's a brilliant artist. He said, well, what's he like? Well, he draws a lot like Norman Rockwell. So if you haven't seen Lawler's artwork, Google Norman Rockwell, look at some of the work he does. It's pretty astonishing, obviously. But Jerry's in that deal. He's very, very gifted. He could have made a great living as an artist if he had not decided to go to be a Rembrandt on the canvas, meaning the squared circle. So he's really brilliant in that regard. I say all the time, it's a matter of time management and discipline. If he took the time to organize himself, Jerry Lawler could make one of the great calendars of all time. He's creative. So calendars or posters or any of those things, he's brilliant at.
James wants to know, is it true that JR was the man who had to let Brian Christopher go?
Yeah, I gave him his notice. I did. It's part of my job. I didn't like it, but I had I'm assuming they're referring to when he got stopped at the border in Canada. We had no leg to stand on. He got popped, and he had substance on him that didn't need to be there. I fulfilled what I was told to do, but it was not, you know what you got to do. You can't have it. So yeah, I did it, and it wasn't fun. It wasn't a fun proposition. Part of that job I used to do there, folks, is not as glamorous as sometimes I make it out to be, and let people know the bad news is not. It's no fun whatsoever.
Jim wants to know, what's Jerry's best quality as a co-commentator?
Well, he's quick-witted, and he processes what he sees very rapidly. And like I said earlier, he can turn what he processes into dialogue that is valuable and viable to the viewer. So I think him processing what he sees in a rapid fire and then coming back with something that makes that where he makes his point even more clear is a great gift he has. He's able to visualize things, and he's again so intelligent and just amazing as to how he could create dialogue right bow. And I found out, as I mentioned earlier, that what lessened that spontaneity is that too much preparation. And, we never went down and said, okay, I'll say this, King, and you say that. It was always, okay, I'll start the segment and bring it to you. And he didn't even know how I was going to bring it to him. Because he listened. And so, his processing was amazing. And great crowd psychology, psychology in general. He's an old school guy, didn't have a college degree. He's a school of hard knocks, honor student. But he's street smart, and so he uses that to his advantage.
Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in this week. This was a fun episode. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. We're going to get December kicked off right next week. We're going to talk about Bischoff and the WWE. Of course, JR wasn't there for the most recent run, but I'm sure we'll do a little freestyling about it. But he was there for Eric's entire run the first time. And after being across from him and all those battle lines for the Monday Night War, this should be an interesting topic, to say the least. We've also got the rest of the year mapped out for you. The following week on December 12th, we're going to be back your way with Armageddon 2004. On December 19th, it's all about TLC 2009. We're getting our Wayback Machine the day after Christmas and talk about Starrcade 88. And stay tuned. Right at the first of the year, we're going to do something very interesting. Jim and myself are going to get together and we're going to do a watch along of the night that WCW presented the Finger Poke of Doom. And that same week here on our string of shows, the day before, we'll have Tony Schiavone watch the Mrs. Foley baby boy becoming the world champion. Of course, that's the night that he famously dropped the line. That'll put some butts in seats. Those shows were head to head. So we're going to watch both of those shows with you the first week of the year. It should be a lot of fun, especially if you love the nostalgia of professional wrestling like we do. We want to remind you as well, if you go to jimrossshirts.com, we've got a ton of great shirts that are here just in time for Christmas. They're the perfect stocking stuffer, are they not?
Oh, absolutely, Conrad. And also, I've been working very diligently on a new website, jrsbbq.com, jrsbbq.com. And the reason I bring that up is because we hope to have it going this weekend, and we're going to be able to fulfill your orders for sauces, jerky, seasoning, all those things. Again, just quote unquote, just in time for the holidays. So jrsbbq.com, check it out, bookmark it, wherever you cool, smart kids do. And hopefully we'll be able to do some business with you. We appreciate that. So yeah, the t-shirts are doing good. I got my daughter's requests for shirts for the holidays, so they must be getting over, as they say, with the younger crowd. So that's good. And we got some good shows coming up. Always get honest here, folks. It may not be what you want to hear, but it's what you got to hear if you want the truth. And that's what we're going to bring you every week. So, and Conrad, we got in the world of AEW does never end, man. Every Wednesday night we're on TV on TNT. It's going to be fun to see how we finish out December with some very important big shows. The WWE is doing all they can to make sure that they cultivate their NXT brand. Don't blame them a damn bit. It doesn't affect me one iota. It should not affect anybody on our roster one iota. We got all we can say grace over. Period. Taking care of our business and not worrying about anything else. And also, it's okay, folks, to be a fan of WWE and AEW, and everybody else is trying to make a living in wrestling. Why not? So that's where I stand. I don't want to be decisive. What's that word I'm looking for? Divisive. Yeah, being a dick.
Yeah.
I'm for wrestling. Conrad, if we don't do that, how stupid are we?
Well,
how stupid are you and I if we don't we want everybody to grow.
Oh, absolutely. And I can't believe that we're so stupid that we waited till the end of the show to mention that Jim Ross and myself are coming across the pond, man. Grillin' JR is going to be there as a part of Inside the Ropes on February the 7th. We'll be in London. On February the 8th, we'll be in Manchester. And on February the 9th, we'll be in Glasgow. Tickets are on sale now at insidetheropes.co.uk/JR. I want to give that to you one more time. insidetheropes.co.uk/JR. This is going to be a lot of fun. The first time you and I have made a trip across the pond. Bruce and I did it last year. I know you've done it several times. I'm looking forward to this, man.
Yeah, Kenny McIntosh has a great crew, lovely ladies that work there, hardworking guys. I enjoy being around them. P and Jen and all these, they're beautiful ladies, and of course I kind of like that. But they treat us right. The fans are unabashed. They ask the great questions. Folks, it's going to be a lot of fun with Conrad and I. We don't have any questions off limits. We're going to have some fun with you. We're going to tell some great stories. Sign your swag, the meet and greet thing, the pics, all that stuff. So, and then we don't rush anybody. Kenny does a great job of producing his shows. So we're going to make London, Manchester, and Glasgow special for everybody. And we just hope that you'll join us. And by the way, those tickets are not a bad idea for a stocking stuffer.
Tremendous. If you're a wrestling fan or you have a wrestling fan in your life, this is one hell of an item to pick up. Check it out right now. It's insidetheropes.co.uk/JR. February will be here before you know it.
Indeed it will. And look, I think we get to go to a train ride or two. I'm kind of digging this. I'm like a little kid sometimes. I'm a childlike. I love it over there. I've never traveled outside the United States anywhere I like more than going to the UK. Not just kissing ass. It's just a fact. I love the food. Be honest with you about that. I can understand about pretty much what everybody's saying, because they are challenged to hear what I'm saying. So it's going to be fun, man. We're going to have a good time. Can't wait, folks. You can't be there if you don't have a ticket. I can tell you that right now. That's conclusive. Your ass will not be in the building if you don't have a ticket. So we're giving you the opportunity to get that ticket right now, and gift, good holiday gifts, as we said. Conrad and I will not let you down. I'll guarantee you that.
We'll see you in February, and we'll see you next week right here, always on Westwood One, always Thursday, always 6 a.m. Eastern. And next week, especially Eric Bischoff. This should be a fun show next week, right here on Grillin' JR with the voice of wrestling, Jim Ross.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.